The snow was swallowing the road, the wind howling like a warning siren, when one man stopped his truck and rolled down the window. "Come with me," the ex-Navy SEAL said quietly, staring at a widow and her 2 children standing alone in the blizzard. She hesitated, because sometimes the most dangerous storms aren't in the sky, but in the heart. Stay with this story until the very end, because what that man did next will remind you that heroes don't always wear uniforms. And before we begin, please like this video and subscribe to Ever Bell's Tales. Your support helps us share stories that restore faith in humanity. The blizzard didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in with a quiet cruelty, the kind that gave false confidence before tightening its grip. At first, it was only light snow dusting the road, then heavier flakes swirling in the headlights, and finally a roaring wall of white that swallowed everything in its path. Emma Parker gripped the steering wheel with numb fingers as her car skidded, tires fighting helplessly against the ice. Her heart hammered in her chest, but she forced her voice to stay calm. "It's okay," she told the back seat, where her children sat bundled in oversized coats. "We're okay." She repeated the words like a spell, hoping they would become true. 7-year-old Noah stared out the window, his brows furrowed with worry far beyond his years. 4-year-old Lily clutched her stuffed rabbit, her small hands trembling despite her mittens. Emma's mind raced. She shouldn't have driven this late, shouldn't have trusted the weather report, shouldn't have believed she could manage everything alone. But life had stopped offering her the luxury of hesitation a year ago, the day her husband never came home from work. Since then, every decision felt heavy, every mistake unforgiving. The car lurched violently, then slid sideways before slamming into a snowbank with a dull final thud. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died. Silence followed, thick, terrifying silence, broken only by the howl of the wind. Emma tried the ignition again. Nothing. Her breath came faster now, fogging the windshield. She glanced at the dashboard, warning lights blinking uselessly, and then at her children in the rearview mirror. Fear surged, sharp and relentless, but she swallowed it down. Panic would only scare them. "It's just a little stop," she said, forcing a smile. "We'll be moving again soon." She checked her phone. 1 bar, then none. The battery flashed red like a cruel joke. Emma stepped out of the car, instantly assaulted by the cold. The wind tore at her coat, snow stinging her face as if the storm itself was angry with her. Visibility was almost non-existent. The road behind them had vanished completely. No headlights, no houses, just endless white. She returned to the car quickly, her cheeks burning, and wrapped the kids tighter in blankets pulled from the trunk. Minutes passed. Then more. Time blurred, measured only by how much colder it felt. Noah's lips were turning pale, and Lily's quiet whimpers cut into Emma's chest. She held them close in the back seat, rubbing their arms, whispering stories about sunny days and warm kitchens, about pancakes and laughter. Anything to keep their minds away from the cold creeping in. Inside, fear screamed. What if no one comes? What if I waited too long? Emma's thoughts drifted, uninvited, to her husband. He had always been the calm one during storms, the steady presence who knew what to do. She remembered his laugh, his hands warm around hers, the way he promised she would never face the world alone. Standing there now, surrounded by snow and silence, that promise felt painfully distant. Tears burned her eyes, freezing almost instantly on her lashes. She pressed her forehead against Noah's. "I'm here," she whispered. "I won't let anything happen to you." It was a promise born from love and desperation. Just as hopelessness threatened to settle completely, a faint glow appeared through the snow. Emma stiffened, barely daring to breathe. Headlights, real ones, cutting through the storm like a lifeline. The vehicle slowed, tires crunching cautiously, before stopping several feet ahead. Emma's heart raced, torn between relief and fear. She had learned to be cautious. Too many nights alone, too many warnings about trusting strangers. The driver's door opened, and a tall figure stepped out, shoulders squared against the wind. He moved with purpose, unaffected by the chaos around him. "Mom," he called out, his voice firm but not harsh. "You can't stay out here." Emma instinctively pulled her children closer. "We're fine," she replied quickly, even though the lie tasted bitter. "We're just waiting." The man approached slowly, hands visible, his eyes scanning the children first, then the car, then the storm. Snow clung to his beard, but his gaze was clear, alert, assessing, protective. He knelt slightly to Noah's level. "Hey, buddy," he said gently. "You cold?" Noah nodded, unable to speak. The man's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He straightened and looked at Emma. "This storm's getting worse. Another hour out here could be dangerous." His tone wasn't commanding, but it carried weight, the voice of someone used to being listened to in emergencies. Emma shook her head. "I don't know you," she said, her voice trembling now despite her efforts. "I can't just—" The man nodded once, understanding. "That's fair," he said. "Name's Jack. I live a few miles from here. Got heat, food, blankets." He glanced again at the kids, then back at her. "I won't leave you here." The wind roared louder, as if daring her to refuse. Emma looked down at Lily's pale face, at Noah's shaking hands. Pride, fear. An instinct warred inside her. Trusting a stranger felt terrifying, but staying meant risking her children's lives. Jack seemed to read the conflict in her eyes. He didn't rush her. He simply stood there, steady as the storm raged around them. Finally he spoke again, softer this time. "Come with me." Something in his voice, quiet certainty, not pressure, broke through her fear. Emma nodded, tears slipping freely now. Jack moved quickly, lifting Lily with practiced ease, wrapping Noah in a thick thermal blanket from his truck. His movements were efficient, protective, the kind born from training and experience. As Emma climbed into the warm cab, the heater blasting life back into their frozen limbs, she let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Outside, the blizzard continued its assault, but inside that truck, for the first time since the storm began, and perhaps since her husband died, Emma felt a fragile sense of safety return. She didn't know who Jack really was yet. She didn't know how the night would end. But as the truck pulled away from the abandoned car and into the white unknown, one truth settled in her heart sometimes. Survival begins the moment you accept help. The truck moved slowly through the blizzard, its headlights carving two narrow tunnels through the endless white. Snow hammered against the windshield, the wipers working tirelessly as Jack kept both hands steady on the wheel. Every movement he made was deliberate, calm, practiced, like someone who had learned long ago that panic was a luxury no one could afford. Emma sat rigid in the passenger seat, Lily bundled against her chest, Noah tucked close at her side. The warmth inside the cab felt unreal after the biting cold outside, and Emma's fingers tingled painfully as feeling returned. She watched Jack from the corner of her eye, searching his face for clues, danger, deception, anything that would confirm the fear still gripping her heart. Instead, she found focus, purpose. "I'm going to take it slow," Jack said, breaking the silence. His voice was even, reassuring without being condescending. "Visibility's bad, but this road curves right. After that, it's straight to my place." Emma nodded, unable to form words yet. Lily had stopped shivering, her head resting heavily against Emma's shoulder. Noah stared at the dashboard, his small chest rising and falling unevenly. Jack reached into the back seat and pulled out a thermos, handing it to Emma. "Hot tea," he said. "Careful, it's strong." Emma hesitated, then accepted it. The heat burned her palms in the best way possible. She pressed it into Noah's hands first. "Sip slowly," she whispered. As they drove, the storm seemed to rage harder. As if angry at losing its grip on them, Jack navigated the road with a kind of quiet confidence that slowly eased Emma's fear. "You do this a lot?" she finally asked, her voice hoarse. Jack glanced at her briefly, then back to the road. "Used to," he said. "Different conditions, same principle. Stay calm. Respect the environment. Don't fight what you can't control." She studied him more closely now. The set of his shoulders, the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. "You said you live out here?" she asked. He nodded. "Cabin's been in my family for years. It's off-grid, but it's solid." There was a pause before he added, "I'm ex-Navy CL." The words landed quietly, without pride. Emma blinked. "You don't sound like it," she said before she could stop herself. Jack smiled faintly. "Most people expect something louder," he replied. "But the job teaches you restraint, control." He didn't elaborate, and Emma sensed that whatever stories he carried weren't meant for casual conversation. The truck turned onto a narrow path, trees looming like silent guards. Moments later, a small cabin appeared through the snow, its windows glowing softly. Emma felt tears sting her eyes again, this time from relief. Inside, the warmth wrapped around them instantly. Jack moved with efficiency, hanging wet coats, guiding the kids toward the fireplace. He built a fire quickly, the crackle of flames filling the room with life. "Sit," he instructed gently, placing blankets over Noah and Lily. Emma watched him move, overwhelmed by gratitude she didn't know how to express. He handed the kids mugs of hot chocolate, steam rising, their faces lighting up at the first sip. "Best night ever," Noah whispered, and Emma felt something in her chest loosen. As the children settled, Jack turned to Emma. "There's a bathroom down the hall. Towels are clean." She nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. When she returned, Jack had laid out dry clothes for the kids. "My sisters," he explained simply. They sat by the fire, the storm raging outside but contained now, kept at bay by thick walls and steady flames. "Why are you really helping us?" Emma asked softly after a while. Jack stared into the fire, his jaw tightening slightly. "Because once," he said, "I was the one in the storm." He told her about leaving the military, about the nights haunted by memories he couldn't escape, about the guilt of surviving when others didn't. "I didn't know how to live without chaos," he admitted. "Then one winter night, I drove until I ran out of road. Someone found me, pulled me out of a ditch, brought me inside, didn't ask questions." He glanced at her. "That was the night I decided I'd keep my door open." Emma listened, tears slipping down her cheeks. She told him about her husband, about the accident, about the fear of raising 2 children alone. Jack listened the same way he drove, focused, present, without interruption. "You're doing better than you think," he said quietly. "Your kids are alive because you didn't give up." His words felt like a lifeline. When the children finally fell asleep near the fire, Jack stood and checked the storm outside. "Roads will be passable by morning," he said. "You can stay as long as you need tonight." Emma nodded, her voice thick. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack shook his head. "It's not a favor," he replied. "It's a promise." As the wind howled beyond the cabin, Emma realized that sometimes safety doesn't come from walls or weapons, but from someone who chooses to stand between you and the storm. Morning arrived quietly, almost apologetically, as if the storm itself knew it had gone too far. Emma woke to a stillness she hadn't felt in days. No howling wind, no rattling windows, just the soft crackle of dying embers in the fireplace and pale sunlight filtering through frost-laced glass. For a moment, she didn't move. She lay there listening, letting the calm sink in, afraid that if she breathed too deeply the peace might vanish. Lily was curled against her side, warm and deeply asleep, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. Noah lay nearby on a blanket, his face relaxed, free of the worry that had weighed on him the night before. Emma's eyes filled with tears, not of fear this time, but relief so powerful it almost hurt. She rose quietly and wrapped herself in a borrowed sweater, stepping toward the window. Outside, the world looked transformed. Snow blanketed the ground in soft, untouched layers glittering faintly under the morning light. Trees stood heavy and bowed, but unbroken. The storm had left behind silence instead of destruction. Emma pressed her forehead gently against the glass and whispered a quiet thank you. To God, to the universe, to the man sleeping in the next room who had chosen to stop when he didn't have to. Jack was already awake, standing at the small kitchen counter, pouring coffee into mismatched mugs. He glanced up and nodded. "Morning," he said softly, careful not to wake the kids. "Storms passed. Roads should be clearing soon." His voice carried the same calm authority, but there was something gentler in it now, as if the night had softened him too. Emma joined him, accepting the mug he offered. The warmth seeped into her hands, grounding her. "I don't know how to repay you," she said quietly. Jack shook his head. "You don't," he replied. "You just keep going." After breakfast, the kids bundled up and stepped outside, their laughter echoing as they ran through the snow, free and light again. Emma watched them from the porch, her heart swelling at the sound. Jack stood nearby, checking the truck, clearing snow with efficient strokes. For the first time since her husband's death, Emma allowed herself to imagine a future that didn't feel like constant survival. Not easy, but possible. True to his word, Jack drove them into town once the roads were passable. He stayed until the tow truck arrived, made sure Emma's car would be repaired, and helped her carry supplies she hadn't realized she desperately needed. When everything was settled, Emma faced him, unsure how to say goodbye. "You saved us," she said simply. Jack met her gaze, then looked at the kids. "You saved them," he corrected gently. "I just showed up." They parted with a handshake that turned briefly into an embrace, awkward, sincere, human. As Emma drove away, she glanced in the rearview mirror, watching Jack stand by the roadside until they disappeared from view. Something inside her shifted then. Not romantic, not dramatic, but deeply grounding. She wasn't alone in the world, even if she often felt that way. Weeks passed. Life resumed its familiar rhythm. School drop-offs, work bills. But something had changed. Emma found herself stronger, calmer. When challenges arose, she remembered Jack's voice, "Stay calm. Don't fight what you can't control." She took a better job closer to home. The kids laughed more. Snow fell again, but this time it didn't feel like a threat. One afternoon, Emma received a handwritten note in the mail. No return address, just her name written neatly. Inside was a simple message. "Hope you and the kids are well. The door's always open." Jack, she smiled, tucking the note into a drawer where she kept things that mattered. Months later, on the anniversary of the storm, Emma and the kids visited the cabin. Jack welcomed them like family. They shared a meal, stories, and laughter by the fire. As the evening settled in, Emma watched her children asleep on the couch, safe and warm. She turned to Jack. "That night," she said softly, "I thought the storm was the worst thing that ever happened to me." Jack listened. "And now?" he asked. Emma smiled through tears. "Now I know it led us somewhere we needed to be." Outside, snow began to fall again, gentle this time, harmless, beautiful. Emma realized then that storms don't always come to destroy. Sometimes, they come to bring people together, to remind us that help can arrive in the most unexpected forms, and that even after great loss, life still offers warmth, safety, and hope, if we're brave enough to accept it. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that compassion can save lives, please like this video and subscribe to Everbell's Tales. Your support helps us continue sharing stories of courage, kindness, and hope.